June 13th, 2026, MetLife Stadium. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a World Cup clash that completely flipped the football world on its head. I'm talking about the unbelievable standoff between Brazil and Morocco. And honestly, that final 1-1 scoreline, it barely even scratches the surface of the tactical and psychological drama that actually went down on the pitch.
To really grasp what happened here, you kind of have to feel the environment. Picture this. Over 80,600 fans packed into that massive stadium, and the vast majority of them were decked out in yellow. The noise was literally deafening. This was supposed to be the glorious kickoff for a Brazilian squad that is absolutely desperate to capture their first World Cup title since all the way back in 2002. So you can imagine the expectations resting on those five-time champions were just astronomical.
But man, the script flipped so fast. By the 21st minute, that roaring sea of yellow had gone dead silent. Brazil was losing. And as they limped toward halftime, pretty much everyone, fans, commentators, everyone was asking the exact same question. Is this really Brazil? Because these mighty footballing giants looked totally unrecognizable out there.
To make sense of it, we really need to look at the psychological baseline. You had Brazil's intense, historical desperation to reclaim their crown, colliding head-on with a Moroccan team that simply refused to be intimidated. Keep in mind, Morocco reached the semi-finals of the 2022 World Cup. That was one of the most incredible runs we've ever seen. They had proven pedigree. They weren't just happy to be invited. And Brazil knew exactly how dangerous this opponent was.
So, how exactly did Morocco dismantle them? Let's get into the tactics. Section 1. Morocco's masterclass. The opening onslaught.
Right from the jump, Morocco did not sit back. There was absolutely no parking the bus here. Instead, they came out firing, registering a staggering 12 shots in just the first 30 minutes. Just let that sink in for a second. 12 shots in half an hour against a five-time World Cup champion.
To put that offensive explosion into perspective, those 12 shots Morocco took in the opening 30 minutes, that is actually more than Brazil had conceded in their previous 6 full World Cup matches combined. It's wild. Morocco's brave, hyper-aggressive tactics totally shattered Brazil's defensive structure and threw them into complete chaos.
And you don't just have to take the data's word for it. A former Uruguay international watching the match live said he was incredibly surprised by how technically poor Brazil looked. Under Morocco's relentless pressure, Brazilian players were missing simple, everyday passes. This really proves Morocco didn't just get lucky. Their fearless strategy forced Brazil into making some very uncharacteristic errors. So how did that pressure turn into a tangible advantage? Well, in the 21st minute, it all fell apart for Brazil. It started exactly how the experts saw it, a really uncharacteristic mistake in the Brazilian midfield. Morocco instantly capitalized. They pushed the ball right forward to Ismail Saibari, who was facing a surprisingly slow-reacting Brazilian keeper. Saibari coolly chips it in, boom, 1-0 Morocco. Now, looking at the overall flow of the game, it was a total roller coaster. We just talked about that shocker of an opening goal from Saibari in the 21st, but Brazil, looking super desperate at this point, went searching for a hero. And they actually found one in the 32nd minute, before basically holding on for dear life at the very end. Let's zoom in on that critical middle phase.
Which brings us to Section 2, the broken streak, Vinicius Junior's anomaly. Right around the 32nd minute, Brazil finally manages to bypass Morocco's intense press, and they do it through sheer individual brilliance. Vinicius Junior and Bruno Guimaraes link up beautifully. They exchange these quick, precise passes out on the left flank, creating just enough space for Vinicius to fire off a lethal right-footed strike. And just like that, for a brief second, it felt like Brazil had woken up.
That equalizer wasn't just massive for the team. It was a big personal milestone, too. It was Vinicius Junior's 10th international goal for the Brazilian national team, and his third scored on U.S. soil. It was exactly the kind of spark you'd expect to ignite a full comeback for a squad with Brazil's pedigree.
But here's where the stats get super fascinating. Historically, when Vinicius Junior scores, Brazil wins. End of story. In the previous 8 matches where he scored, Brazil walked away with 8 wins, a flawless, perfect formula. But here at MetLife, that perfect record was officially broken. Morocco made sure this 9th match ended in a draw, basically proving Brazil couldn't just rely on a moment of superstar magic to bail them out anymore.
So what on earth happened after that equalizer? Let's get into Section 3, Survival Mode, the second half stalemate.
If you were expecting the second half to turn into this crazy offensive shootout where Brazil just completely takes over, you'd be wrong. The whole dynamic shifted. Both teams basically ended up playing not to lose.
It turned into this really tense, fear-driven stalemate, and hardly any clear chances were created at all. The historical juggernauts of the sport were essentially forced into survival mode against a team everyone assumed they'd easily beat. And when I say survival mode, I mean it in the most literal sense. Down to the dying seconds of the match, it was Brazil's keeper, Alisson, who had to step up and play the hero. He pulls off this frantic late double save. Make no mistake, if Alisson doesn't make those saves, Brazil doesn't even get a draw. They would have lost their opening match outright.
All right, stepping back from the pitch, let's hit our macro takeaway in Section 4, the closing gap, global football's paradigm shift.
When we pull all this together, three huge themes really stand out. First, Morocco's manager, who was a World Cup debutant, by the way, executed an absolutely fearless, flawless game plan. Second, instead of rising to the occasion, Brazil showed some deep technical fragility and straight-up defensive panic under pressure. And third, this was no upset. Morocco proved that their incredible 2022 run was not a fluke. They are a permanent threat. This definitely wasn't a story of Brazil just having a bad day at the office.
So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. Has the gap between football's traditional, historical powers and the rest of the world permanently closed? Because out there on that pitch, in front of 80,000 people, we saw a hungry, fearless team go toe-to-toe with giants, and it was the giants who were left sweating. Just think about what that means for the future of the sport. If you enjoyed this breakdown, keep tuning in. Catch you in the next Explainer.